There's all kinds of bullies. You can have a bully who's a boss. You can have a bully who's a pastor. You can have a bully who's a coach. You can have a bully who's supposed to be a friend. You can have a bully who's a parent. I've even seen kids who are bullies, sometimes bullying one another, sometimes bullying their own parents. I saw this recently at a restaurant where the family was having dinner and the child decided, young child, they didn't want to eat dinner, just dessert. And they looked around and they knew, if I throw a fit, freak out, my parents will give me whatever I want. So that's exactly what they did. Blood-curdling scream, freaking out, total tantrum. The parents looked at the child in an effort to stave off their horrific embarrassment and said, just knock it off. I'll give you whatever you want. That's a little terrorist. That's what that is. That's a dessert-loving terrorist. This has turned into a hostage negotiation. Bullies come in all sizes, shapes, and forms. Some bullies are mean and cruel and rude. Some are really sweet and nice. They smile and flirt with you and say nice things to you and encourage you while they push you around. Jesus here is dealing with a particular kind of bully. There's lots of kinds of bullies. He's dealing with religious bullies. They've been pushing people around. And now they want to show up and they want to push Jesus around. They want to tell him what to do. They realize thousands are following him. They're not following us. If we get him to follow us, then they will be following us as well. Number two, Jesus says that these religious bullies are hypocrites. Hypocrites. What's a hypocrite? Well, a hypocrite is someone who, according to the definition of the word in the original Greek text, they're wearing a mask or they're like an actor playing a role. So if you look at religious people, you say, well, they must love God. Look, they dress a certain way, they act a certain way, they speak a certain way, they're against all the sinful things, and they seem very sincere and very committed and very devout. And Jesus says, I know their heart. And I can tell you, they don't love me. They love control, they love piety, they love morality, they love religion, but they don't love me. Now, Christians are often accused of being hypocrites. And let me say a few things on this. Number one, some people who say they're Christians aren't. Some aren't. Like, if you ask these guys, do you believe in God, love God, worship God? They'd say, yeah. But Jesus says they don't really know him or love him. Jesus says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Some will hear, depart from me. I don't even know you. We don't have a relationship. Number two, some Christians are hypocrites. And a hypocrite is one who pretends they're something they're not. But that's not only Christians. Politicians do it, leaders do it, non-Christians do it. We give the presentation that we're holy and devout and pious and moral and good. And if you followed us around and looked at what we were doing, you would see some inconsistency. Number three, most Christians aren't hypocrites because to be a Christian, you have to confess and profess that you're a what? A sinner. So sometimes non-Christians will look at Christians and say, well, you're a hypocrite. Why? Because you're sinning. To become a Christian, I had to raise my hand as being a sinner. If being a Christian means you say you're a sinner and I sin, that's not hypocrisy. I'm just being consistent. I said I was a sinner. I sinned. That's not a hypocrite. By definition, a Christian is one who says, I'm a sinner. Jesus died for me. That's how bad I am. I really need help. God help me. That's a Christian. Now, the hypocrite is the one who says, you have a lot of sin, I don't have it. You struggle with it, I don't. I'll judge you. You can't judge me. And then you follow them around and you realize, hey, they're ripping people off and committing sexual sin. And all the stuff they're telling everybody else not to do and all the stuff that they deny doing, that's the very thing they're doing. These guys are bullies, pushing people around, and hypocrites judging people for things that they're guilty of. Now, here's how it works. Bullies use tactics. And these are religious bullies, but there's all kinds of bullies, and the principles are consistent. And because we've been spending so much time with the Pharisees, and they will continue to show up throughout the remainder of the book until they murder Jesus, it's important for us to understand how they work. And I'm going to give you some of their tactics and tricks and how they're going to use all of these in this event with Jesus. And this is how bullies work in our life as well. And if you're a bully, you're probably familiar with some of these also. Threatening with punishment If you do that, you will pay. If you don't do what I tell you to do, you will suffer. You're going to pay. You're going to hurt. It's going to cost you. Threat of punishment or withholding of reward. Sometimes they seek to embarrass or humiliate. That's exactly what they're doing to Jesus. They're not pulling him aside one-on-one. Okay, Jesus, we disagree. Can we talk about this? No, they're going to publicly shame him, humiliate him. They're going to pick a fight in front of this large crowd of thousands. Also, they work through intimidation. Sometimes this is sheer force of personality. A little overwhelming. It can also be commanding and demanding. I order you. I'm telling you. You need to. Bossing, bullying, shoving you around. Some people are just pushy. And they're rude. And they won't take no for an answer. They just keep pushing. They just keep demanding. They just keep inserting. And they wear you down. That's a bully. Sometimes they're just inconsiderate. All they care about is themselves. They don't think of you, other people. It's all about them. They're the center and everybody needs to work around them. Sometimes bullies are just rude. The things they ask for, demand, how they always want to be a priority and get cuts in the line of your life is fascinating. Also, some bullies are the self-appointed rule maker. In your life or in your family or in your community, they just choose to be the rule maker. So they're going to make the rules, tell everybody the rules, enforce the rules, and if you break the rules, they're going to tell everybody else that you broke the rules to shame you, to get you back in line. Now, all of these things are going to do with Jesus. And when it comes to the rule making and shame-causing religious type of control freaks and bullies, sometimes it starts when you're little. You ever seen kids play together? I've got 5 kids, love them. Sometimes I'll pretend like I'm leaving the room, but I'll eavesdrop just to see what's going on. And usually there's one kid who decides, there's no adults, I'm in charge. And they make rules about the Legos and the Barbies and everything else. And they announce the rules to all the other children. If the other children break the rules, you can't do that. You broke a rule. Do you kids see that? They broke a rule. That's just a little Pharisee. Just a little Lego Pharisee. That's all it is. And I've heard parents say, oh, my child is a leader. No, they're not. They're not. They murdered Jesus. Your child murdered Jesus. Well, that's where they're going if you don't correct this. They're on the wrong team. But it happens even when you're an adult, doesn't it? Certain people you know, they make rules that aren't in the Bible, and they tell you to obey them, and if you don't, then their wrath comes down. And they'll shame you and tell everyone else, and no one else wants to endure their wrath, so they agree with them, and all of a sudden, you're backing up, and you're feeling pushed around. They're going to use all of these tactics and tricks with Jesus, the bullies will. And what bullies really use, and what the Pharisees have used to bully the multitudes, the Pharisees have bullied the multitudes, now they want to bully Jesus. It's something called fear of man. They want you to be scared of them. Proverbs 29:25 says that the fear of man is a trap or a snare. They want you to be afraid of them. There's a guy named Ed Welch who's written a lot on this. He's a good biblical counselor. He's got a book, When People Are Big and God Is Small. He gives us this functional working definition of fear of man. Fear in the biblical sense. And here, Jesus is going to, let me say this, Jesus is going to use the word fear 5 times. So let me say, where's he going with this? Jesus is going to use the word fear 5 times in this section. So one of the big mega themes is fear. He's going to use the word anxious once. So anxiety is often caused by fear. You're scared of someone, you're scared of consequences, you're scared of what's going to happen, you're scared of what they're going to do, you're fearful of them. You have fear of man issues. The result is anxiety. You're stressed, you can't sleep, you got a nervous eye twitch, you don't want to see them, you try to avoid them, you can't sleep at night, your blood pressure's up, you're stressed out, you're freaked out, you're anxious. And you go to your doctor, and maybe your doctor, in an effort to try and help, is going to try and deal with all your physical symptoms and complications, and that can be helpful and good. But if you don't deal with the fear-causing source, you're going to still have the anxiety-causing consequence. You're scared. So Jesus is going to talk about fear and how it leads to anxiety and how to overcome the problem of anxiety through dealing with the source of the fear.